Hi folks, Dr. van den Hove here. I'm going to talk to you about running technique today because that's what I've been focusing on lately. And it sounds strange because I think I started running at around the age of 10, 12 maybe. So I've been running for quite a while, but I never really optimized my technique. And that only brings you so far. It caps your performance, and it also, especially when you get a little older, say above 30, you get more prone to injuries. And if your running technique isn't on par, then you're even more vulnerable for developing these kinds of injuries. I've been watching a lot of people run, and I see a lot of people make the same mistakes. And it all comes down to the fact that we try to run in the same way as we walk. So most people swing their leg forward when they walk, and they land with their heel in front of their center of gravity. And they land on the heel first, and then they transition to the midfoot and then the forefoot. So that's basically how we evolved to walk. And while walking, that makes a lot of sense. But when you start to run, it makes a lot less sense. And it also increases the load and the tension on your limbs, especially your ankles, knees, and hips. So when we run like this and we heel strike and overstride, so our stride is too far in front of our is too large, and we land too far in front of our center of gravity, and we land on the heel, then we put a lot of stress on the ankle, the knee, the joint, and even the lower back. So I think that's one of the main reasons why people who start to run or they increase their running distances complain a lot of injuries in those joints. And we can do something about that. Isn't that great? And when we change our running form and running technique, we will start to run much more fluent, much more efficient, with much less effort, and oftentimes even faster, with better endurance and running capacity. I think this is also very important for injury prevention, because in that overstriding and heel striking, we have a lot of time with ground contact. So we hit the floor, and then our load gets distributed towards our the rest of our leg, and then our back and the upper body. And it takes a lot of time. There's a lot of ground contact until this side comes off the ground again. So in combination with overstriding and heel striking, we also see that a lot of people have a very low running cadence, meaning the amount or the number of ground contacts or leg or arm swings, if you will, you make per minute. And there's a lot of research that has been done on optimal cadence for performance and even injury prevention. And we know that if you are around a cadence of, say, 130 to 160, that's a bit on the low side per minute. Whereas you want to go more towards 170, 180. Now, let's talk about how we can actually improve that running form. And this is fun because I've been practicing this a lot lately, and I can really see things changing in my own running. It feels different. I have, especially if I go for longer distances, I tended to have fatigued knees. They hurt a little bit, and especially fatigued lower back. But now I started to run with much less effort, and the only thing that I'm starting to feel more are my calves. And this brings me to the following point, because if you want to talk about what you can improve in your running technique, you have to realize that we were born, or we developed, to run in a very different way, because we didn't used to have shoes. At least that's what I believe, thousands of years ago. And when you run barefoot, especially if you try it on concrete, you are not going to overstride and heel strike. So what you're most likely to do is you are going to hit the ground right underneath your center of gravity, and you will push off more. Instead of trying to swing your leg to the front, you are pushing off to propel yourself forward. And that means you will land in a midfoot or forefoot strike, and you will be bouncing more, much more than when you run with shoes on. And it's great. I mean, we've got these modern shoes that are really cushioned. Look at how thick the cushioning has become in the sole. It makes it really comfortable, but it also changed the way that we run, because it became much too comfortable to land on your heel and overstride. If you don't believe me, take your shoes off and your socks and go run on the concrete and see if you overstride or heel strike and how you like it. I bet you will find a way how to do a midfoot or forefoot strike, and you will run in a better form naturally. But that isn't all. And here's the sequence that I worked on when I started improving my running technique. So the first thing is that a better run uses gravity more. So running should actually be like falling forward. And you're basically falling forward all the time, and then you're catching yourself with your feet. That's the first thing. And in that falling forward, you need your legs, your hips, and your torso to be stacked in one line. So it means you need a neutral pelvis position. And a lot of people nowadays, they live in anterior pelvic tilt, which means that you're overarching your lower back. And sometimes they combine it with bending at the hip. So you're basically trying to be upright and you bend at the hip, and then you start to run. But you need to be stacked. So you have to correct your hip alignment in the first place. That also creates a much better core stability, which will help you in not only running, but also lifting weights and all other sorts of exercises. And from that position, you lean forward and you start to fall forward. And then the next phase is how to catch yourself while falling forward. So you need to do something with your legs. And that brings me to the third part. So the first two parts are the falling forward, the being in alignment. And the third part is that you should think of running more as a bouncing strategy. Perhaps you even did these sorts of exercises where you do the pogo jump. If you do the pogo jump, you see that I'm hitting the ground and directly using my calves to propel myself up again. So the ground contact time is very short. It's this bouncing strategy. For all of you CrossFitters out there, that's also the way to do a double under. You can't do a double under if you bend your knees too far and your ground contact is very long, because then that just doesn't work. You don't have enough time. So you need to be bouncing up again. And the same thing is true for running. So, but then not with both both feet at the same time, because you'd be basically jumping like a kangaroo. But while running, you do it with one foot at a time. And then you start to increase your cadence. You bring your arms into the mix and try to not extend them too much forward, but more towards the back. And runners call this the figure 4 technique. And if you combine this with falling forward, you suddenly start to run very differently. And let's look at some previous videos that I recorded where you can see my previous running form with the improved running form. So eventually you want to run with very short strides, high cadence, and you want to fall forward while catching yourself and bouncing. Now let's look at some old footage of mine. You can clearly see all of the problems that we've discussed. Heel striking, overstriding, landing way too far in front of my center of gravity. And I'm very upright. I'm not using gravity to propel myself forward, and I'm not nicely stacked at the hips. Whereas in this improved footage, I'm leaning forward and I'm really nicely stacked. And in the run, I land on my midfoot right underneath the center of gravity. And I use more of a jumpy push-off technique here with the same cadence, but different stride lengths and different speeds of run. Alright, that's it for today. I hope you learned a lot and I wish you good luck. Happy running!